When we spoke last time in May, you mentioned you've just had rain in Belgium, where you're based, after 3 months complete
Yeah.
dry. Must have been a relief.
Yeah, 100%. Well, if you are living in the city and you just like to go outside and just relax and enjoy the sun, then you don't like rain. But if you know that you need rain to grow food, and if you have your own vegetable garden or food forest, like I have, for example, or a lot of our clients have, then it's
Mhm.
pretty stressful to not have any rain because plants still need rain. And we sometimes forget that if we live city life and can just go to the supermarket and get everything we can. But we need rain. And so when it rained, we were super, super, super happy because now our trees are
Yeah,
happy and then I'll have food.
absolutely. Did you ever imagine, Louis, that soil would connect so deeply to human health and even sports performance?
No, no, no. I would never made the link if I hadn't like really dived deep into the soil because we're not taught that at school. We never learned in school that where our food comes from and how our health, our performance is closely linked with the soil. We don't even learn about the soil, but without any soil, humans would not even exist. So it's like one of the most basic fundamentals. We walk on it every day. We eat from it every day. It's
Mhm.
interesting to know where it all comes from.
Fascinating. I can't wait to explore that. Let's dive in. The following is a conversation with Louis De Jaeger, author, global regenerative farming advocate, and a passionate storyteller who believes that healthy soil can transform our health, performance, and planet. This is the Pre-Zero Sports Talk podcast, and I'm your host, Bensalah. Today, we explore the surprising and powerful connection between soil health, farming practices, athletic performance, and sustainability. Louis, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you too. I'm very happy to be here.
Great. What inspired your mission to regenerate 550 million hectares of land?
Well, it's a lot, 550 million hectares of land, but we need to do that in order to save humanity. It's really simple as that. What inspired me is my love for humanity. I really love all the beautiful things we humans create. I love the books we write. I love the films. I love to go to the cinema, go to watch music, love to eat delicious food, and all that exists thanks to humans creating this beautiful culture. And it would be sad, in my opinion, if humans would stop to exist on this planet. And so, in order, because I really love humanity, yeah, I'd love the humans to stay on this planet, and for that we need to make sure we live in a sustainable world, or better, in a regenerative world. And
Mm.
when I heard the prediction of the United Nations that said that if we don't do anything in 2050, that's in less than 25 years, 90% of our soils, that's 90% of our soils, will be degraded by then if we
Yeah.
don't change the current way of farming or landscape design. And for me, that was a huge wake up call because I was like, okay, so we have like this beautiful bank account that we got as a present, but in
Mhm.
25 years, this bank account will be empty and then we'll be broke as humanity. And being broke soil wise means that we just won't be able to grow enough food and we will just die. It's a pretty radical way of being broke.
It is. It is. Louis, can you recall a specific experience or moment that deeply impacted you?
Yeah, I was one of the most impactful moments was when I was in the desert in Morocco. I'm a forager, so I know how to survive in the wild. It won't be nice to survive in the wild because I also do love to go to a restaurant and have decent food. But I know which
Mhm.
plants are edible, or I know a few of them that are edible. And when I was in the desert of Morocco, I felt unease because I was like, okay, if I would be dropped here, I wouldn't be able to survive because it's just sand. And when I learned then that this desert was a food forest so many years ago, but that we humans actually degraded the place, and created this desert, it was so shocking because I felt it in every inch of my body, a kind of angst, a kind of really being scared. And I just felt that, okay, if this is how we're gonna turn the world into a desert, then we're doomed. I just felt it so deeply that I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to do something about it because the entire planet is desertifying in a very rapid ratio. And first I thought, well, if you look at Morocco, it's still far from Belgium, where I live, or far from Northern Europe, or from USA. But even if you go to Spain, you see the same happening. Spain is turning into a desert. I know people that laugh at me and say, "Who, Louis? The prediction of 25 years? How funny is that? We only have 2 years left, and a lot of farmers have already left to the city, and a lot of places is already desertified and impossible to farm." And then if you go to France, where I lived in the region around Carcassonne, it's also becoming a desert there. And then in Belgium, I have a landscape architecture firm. We design edible landscapes from like small gardens to entire private islands and everything in between. And one of our projects has a beautiful pond. And during a very dry period, there was a farmer that came in with his truck and he stole our water. And that was also a moment that I realized, oh my God, this is how water wars start. And of course, things were not dramatical, and I didn't freak out and try to kick the guy or like find the guy who did that. Afterwards, we could still pretty much laugh about it, but only because it wasn't this worse. Imagine if that we really needed that water to survive, to grow our own food. Otherwise, we would not have food that year. Yeah, then you would be furious because you wouldn't be able to survive. And so these things, this desertification is getting closer and closer to your home than you think. And that's pretty scary because in the end, no matter if you want to build spaceships and go to Mars, or you're a tech investor, or you're into sports or whatever, we all need food. It's as simple as that. And if we desertify our planet, then we won't have our basic survival, but we also won't have our health, because the good health also comes from good food.
Why specifically 550 million hectares? What difference will this make?
Well, one of the biggest challenges we have is the warming of this climate on planet Earth. We are getting into temperature zones that humanity has never been there. So imagine for the last 12,000 years, people have been living in a very similar kind of climate. And now, for the first time in human history, we're going into a warmer climate, and no human has ever in history been there. So we're the first ones. We're pioneers. So it's going to become very challenging because you're going to have longer periods of droughts, which we're already experiencing today, and then very severe rainfalls and giant floods that are also more and more happening. And theoretically, with 550 million hectares of land, you can cool down the planet with 2 degrees Celsius. So that's enough to stop global warming. Of course, it's not the only thing that we need to do, but it will make a significant impact on everything. And it sounds a lot, but it's actually just doubling the size of the Amazon rainforest that we have today. So it's perfectly feasible. We can do it. We can plant those trees in a year if we all agree to just go and do it. And it's super cheap also. Compared to creating machines that would suck out CO2 from the air. Trees do that for free. And if I talk about the cooling of the climate, I'm not even talking about CO2. That's a nice byproduct. These trees literally cool down the planet by just sweating.
You've been traveling quite a lot. How did that shape your perspective on food systems?
Yeah, well, I'm very privileged to be able to travel a lot, to design landscapes all across the planet, also to give keynotes all across the planet. And when I talk to farmers, I hear a lot of stories, and I hear a lot of challenging stories, but I also hear a lot of hope. And that's what inspired me the most. And that's also what I wrote my book, SOS Save Our Soils, about the farmers that said, okay, this can't go any further. We need to change our way of farming. And they did change their way of farming. And with a lot of benefits, like these farmers are much healthier, and also they save a lot of money. I know farmers who can buy a new Mercedes-Benz every year by just like reducing their pesticides. So it's good for the planet, but it's also good for their wallet. And one of the things that also like struck me the most was health benefits of eating food that comes from a living soil. For me, that was like the most important part of my entire journey, that I met professors or microbiologists or doctors that showed me the impact that vibrant food that is alive has on the human body. It's just incredible the effect it has.
What's causing globally soil degradation and why should we care?
If you want that humanity stays on this planet, then you should care. But also, on a shorter term, if you want to have food in 25 years, then you should also care. Because literally, if we continue this way in 25 years, we'll have huge problems. So that's not too far, 25 years. And if you don't care for yourself, care for your children. And what is causing it? It is causing short-sightedness. It's short-sightedness is causing soil degradation, and a paradigm that we live in that I often compare with our roofs that are leaking. So imagine this is a house, it has a roof. There is a leak in the roof. There's water coming through the roof onto the ground, and of course, it's ruining the house. So what do? In the paradigm we live in right now, I buy a bucket and I put that bucket under the roof. But I'm not fixing the roof. I'm like blind for the roof. And then there's another leak. I'm gonna buy an extra bucket. And then there are people saying, "Oh, Louis, I even have a bigger bucket I can sell you." Okay, cool. Then I don't have to empty it all the time. So I buy bigger buckets for the roof. And then another guy comes, "Hey, Louis, I can empty the buckets for you for only a subscription of $10 per day." I'm like, okay, cool, come and do that for me. And there is an entire industry around like selling bucket services for leaking roofs. And that is what's causing all kind of problems on this planet. We are addressing the symptoms, but not the root cause. If you are thinking logically, you probably have been thinking it right now, you say, "Louis, wake up, fix the damn roof." That's the thing you need to do. But that's not what we're doing. I know brilliant scientists and they say, "Oh, Louis, I've created this amazing geoengineered plant that can survive on the most horrible soils you can imagine." I'm like, okay, I'm super proud of you, bravo, but you just invented a bigger bucket to put under the leaking roof. Instead of, why don't you just fix the roof? You don't need to create a plant that's good on bad soil. You need to create a better soil. You need to just heal the soil. And it's much cheaper to heal the soil than to create a super expensive genetically modified crop. It just makes no sense at all to sell buckets if you could just fix the roof.
I like how you simplify trying to explain the root cause using the bucket. Love it.
Well, the solution is embarrassingly simple, actually.
It is. Can this process be realistically reversed? And if so, how quickly?
Well, there are a couple of things that can be done very quickly. If you look at the European Union, for example, for every 2 euros you give to the European Union, 1 of these 2 euros goes into farming. So a lot of your tax dollars or euros go to farming. And it's in a lot of places in the world. I'm talking about the EU right now, but it's in a lot of places in the world. So if you just would redirect that money into making sure that we make a transition to a regenerative organic way of farming, then we will already be there. It is not difficult to do so. It's just political will. And it's also the people like you and me that need to care. And one of the most important things to care is a joke that I often make when I'm talking in front of a company or in front of a keynote speech group. And I'm saying, okay, please raise your hands. Who of you wants to poison their kids? Most of the time, nobody raises their hands. Nobody wants to poison their kids. And that's the basic of everything. Right now, if you buy food in the supermarket, which is not regeneratively organic, then you are poisoning yourself and poisoning your kids because there are residues of pesticides, which is accumulating in your body and is making you perform worse or making you sick. So that's the second most important part, is that we as humanity need to wake up. And it's not our fault. If you talk to regular people on the street and ask what is organic food, they often don't really know what it's about, and they say, "Oh yeah, it's just like another hype or something." But they don't realize that they are being poisoned.
Since post World War II, we've seen this massive use in farming pesticide, you know, for whatever reason, for quick fix, for having various products, which most of the time they're not seasonal. Where we live, depend which part of the world we live in. And I've been talking to farmers, I've been talking to ranchers as well, I've been talking to various guests on this podcast, and looks like whatever you turn in, most of farming land, the soil is full of chemicals. My question, Louis, and since you traveled a lot, you've spoken to various stakeholders in this industry, in this business, which is farming, is it easy to clean up polluted soil?
Yeah, it's a super important issue because a lot of soils are turned into toxic wastelands. And the good news is you can turn things around. And one of our biggest allies here are microorganisms. Bacteria and fungi, they clean up the soil if you help them. And how do you help them? By planting plants that are very good at phytoremediation. For example, hemp is one of those amazing plants that can really suck out even PFASs, forever chemicals. And then you're able to harvest that hemp and you can do a kind of pyrolysis with it, kind of burn it in a very special way. And then you can take these polyfluor things and put the fluors apart, and then it becomes just not so forever chemical anymore. Then it becomes something that's not poisonous anymore. So you can, using plants called phytoremediation, remove chemicals from the ground. And little by little, sometimes in 1 year, sometimes in a couple of years, you can literally clean the soil. The only problem that can exist is that when these chemicals are leached too deep into the soil in zones where there is no life, then these chemicals can be there for a very, very long time, even forever potentially, if nothing happens with it and it becomes immobile. But the good news is in the upper part of the soil, where there is activity, there it can definitely be cleaned. So, and that's a nice thing about nature. Nature regenerates. Nature always gives us a second chance and is doing it anyway.
Yeah, you mentioned, Louis, the EU incentive supporting farmers within the European Union. Do we know how that incentive is used? Or are there some kind of guideline or some kind of priorities based on what we are talking about now? Or is just an incentive, like you said, I give €2, €1 go to the farming industry within the European Union? Are there some kind of guidelines, some kind of procedure, some kind of obligations, meaning that, okay, we're going to support you, we're going to help you, but you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah, well, that's a sad story in my opinion. We are wasting resources. We can turn things around super quickly to go into regeneratively organic way of farming, but we're not doing so. I have to admit there are also good things going on.
Why? Because it's not scalable? Because it's slow?
No,
because it takes
because
time?
big lobby organizations are blocking it. Every little step politicians or policymakers are taking them to the regenerative direction. Lobbyists or giant companies are blocking it via different strategies, via
Even within the European Union?
Yeah, most
Okay.
definitely. It's crazy. If I have an office in Brussels, and Brussels is called the lobby capital of the European Union. They are, the Lonely Planet books that gives you information about cities.
Yeah.
They even have a book called The Lobby Planet, and there you can see. Well, if you look to that building, there you have the lobbyists of the chemical pesticides industry. There you have the lobbyists for the cigarette industry. So,
Well, help me here, and we're gonna talk. We're gonna elaborate more about the policy, about the governance of things and stuff like that. But help me here. Since a long time, I believe that when it comes to processed and super processed or ultra processed food, which started in the United States of America, since I think around the 70s, late 80s, something like that, when the cigarette and tobacco industry they started to get pushed out. Basically, the policymakers made the tobacco industry life kind of difficult. So most of the big brands in that industry, the tobacco industry, shifted their investment and their focus to the food industry. And therefore, they started to acquire many brands, many corporations within the food industry. And it was a no-brainer, and it's well documented what I'm talking about, that they use their know-how, their scientists, their labs, to try to figure out how to make communities or individuals addictive to certain food. And to do that, you have to do it at a big scale, and you have to do it, let's say, very short period of time. And the only way to do it is to alter the quality of the food. And now, when you look at all the chronic diseases worldwide, maybe less in EU, I don't know, maybe because of the European Union, certain countries' lifestyle, let's say the Mediterranean lifestyle, or maybe the EU regulations within the food industry. But when you look at other countries, like United States, chronic diseases like diabetes, like heart issues, like so many kids, youngsters, 10, 11, 12 years old, obese with severe chronic disease. And the root cause, it's the processed and the ultra-processed food, and now I hear from you, Louis, that, and of course, behind it there is lobbyists, and the lobbyists pushing the politicians to block any kind of bill or regulations to safeguard this industry. And you're telling me that within the European Union we have something similar.
Yeah. So what you're telling is totally true about the processed food. It's making people addicted to it. Scientists have spent their careers on finding ways to make sure that people buy the products more. So it's really not about using science to help people's lives. No, it's just science in order to make more profit, and in a not so ethical way. There's nothing wrong with making profit. I like profit, but not on the expense of people's health.
No.
And we just, like, I'm a landscape designer, so one of the most important things we learn is observation. Once you observe something, then you can know how to interfere in that landscape. It's the same with people. If you observe and just look at the results, and then you observe two things, and that are the two most scary things, I think, that are going on right now on this planet. And that's 1 in every 3 persons is having a chronic disease right now. So that's a lot. If you shake hands of 2 people, then one of the 3 of you is having a chronic disease right now. And if you talk to doctors, then they say that a chronic disease should not even exist. It's not natural. It's not.
Yeah, but Louis, sorry to cut you. The funny thing here, when you go to a doctor or when you talk to medical professionals, and they, through the diagnosis basically is, okay, you have a chronic disease. Let's, as an example, someone is diagnosed with type 1 or type 2 diabetes, said, okay, we are pretty sure you have this disease, therefore here is the medication, here is the process and things like that. But they will never ever discuss the root cause.
Exactly.
What caused the problem, and therefore, and by the way, doctors are not trained when they study 8+ years or 10+, whatever, they don't teach the doctors to investigate, to find out the root cause.
Yeah.
Why? Because the lobby of the pharma industry.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And sometimes the food industry is maybe linked directly or indirectly with the pharma
Yeah,
industry.
100%. And the pesticide
So
industry
yeah.
as well. They're getting money from making people sick and from healing those people. And a chronic disease is actually one of the best business models you can have because they have a subscription to your medication. So it's a dream for every company to have a lifelong
I
subscription to that.
Yeah, I spoke to some colleagues. One of them has type 2 diabetes since quite a long time, been in medication for quite a long time, maybe almost 2 decades.
Horrible.
He told me every time he do I think every 2 months or every 3 months, there is kind of, he goes to the doctor, they do blood test, a urine test and stuff like that, and just to see if they need to change medications or add more or in terms of dosage and stuff like that. But they never, ever, never, ever told him to eat healthy or change completely. Yes, they give you kind of a basic guidelines in terms of which food you should avoid and stuff like that, but they never put you into, let's say, a program or a diet where maybe, especially in type 2 diabetes, maybe you can reverse that issue.
They're selling you
You know.
buckets.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. They're selling you buckets.
Fix the
Yeah.
problem with the
Yeah, here, buy some more buckets, and they're selling them a bucket every new month to have like the new range of pills. But it's true.
Yeah.
With nutrition, you can heal chronic disease. You can even reverse diabetes. You can heal a leaky gut. Can I tell the story about the leaky gut and the
Yeah, go
story
ahead.
with the
Yeah.
soil? That's one of my favorite examples because if you look at the human gut, it's full of little holes and these holes are protected by a liner of bacteria who live in your gut flora. They live in your guts and they protect any bad guys from entering your gut. Now the thing is, those gut bacteria, where do they come from? They come from the food you eat. But if you eat food that's sterile because we nuked all the plants to death with pesticides, then there are no good microorganisms going to be on the apple you eat. Instead, you'll get 25 different pesticide residues on that apple. And what do these pesticide residues do? They kill all the beneficial bacteria in your gut.
Right.
And so all the layer of protection that you have in your gut is actually destroyed by these pesticides. And then your gut becomes more and more empty and void of those beneficial microorganisms. And then you have leaks, and then you have a leaky gut. There are tons of people who healed themselves by just eating a more healthy diet and feeding the gut again. Because more and more holistic medical professionals are saying that in the future we will heal most of our disease via the gut. Because the gut is one of the most important places in our body. It's also called the second brain. And it's a lot about health, but it's also a lot about mental health because we have something called the brain-gut axis. So something not a lot of people know, but 90%, that's 90% of our happiness comes from our gut. Our 90% of our serotonin, the happiness hormone, is created in our gut. And if we eat shitty food, we're going to get a shitty gut. And with the shitty gut, we won't produce happiness hormones, so we become unhappy. And then it brings us to the second very, very scary number I'd like to share, and that's if you shake the hands with 3 people, then one of these 4 people, if you include yourself, is taking antidepressants or sleeping pills at this very moment. So
I fully agree with you.
That is the biggest pandemic going on, and it's happening under our noses. Nobody is talking about it, but 1 in every 3 persons is chronically ill, and 1 in every 4 persons is taking sleeping medication or is taking antidepressants. That is a huge problem. And so what are we doing? We are buying buckets instead of fixing the root cause. And one of the biggest root causes is a shitty gut. We are eating shitty food because we are literally poisoning ourselves. And then we're wondering, oh my God, why do I feel so bad? Well, because you're eating shitty food. And that's not, of course, not per se your fault. It's the fault of the government and of politicians. But it is also, it's maybe not our fault, but it's our responsibility to give a counter voice to all these lobbyists, because politicians, they are still working for us. They're our employees. We are literally paying them. So what do you do if your employees don't listen to you? First of all, you talk with them, but if they keep on not listening to you, then you fire them. And that's how we should treat politicians. They are literally here to protect our interest, not the interest of large corporations. So we have to open our mouths, because the lobbyists may have more money than we do, but they're outnumbered by us. But if we don't open our mouths, then nothing is ever gonna happen.
Louis, for our listeners new to this concept, what exactly is regenerative farming?
Regenerative farming is a way to farm that you can know that you'll still be able to farm in the next million of years. If you look at how this planet was in the beginning, it was one giant big rock, and there was no soil. Soil did not even exist, and we need soil if we want to grow plants. And the only way to create soil is plants that make soil, by working together with microorganisms. It sounds a bit complex maybe, but having a regenerative way of farming is farming that builds the soil. And soil can be built, but only with plants and microorganisms working together to grind the rocks deep in the ground. They grind the rocks, and together with dead plant material and dead animals, together with this rock dust, that creates new soils. And soils take millions of years to form, but we are destroying them at an alarming rate. So we're destroying them faster than it can grow again. So a regenerative way of farming, it grows back the soil. And most and for all, if you don't care about the soil, that's your right. But if you care about your health, regenerative organic farming creates food that's full of soil life. And this soil life, it's on the leaves of the plant, it's on the fruit of the plant. So if you eat that, it will refill your gut, and it will make you happy, and it will make you healthy. A lot of people are now into probiotics, and they drink like little yogurt drinks with some beneficial bacteria inside of them. But I always laugh at them, because there are maybe 3 beneficial bacteria in them. But if you eat a healthy apple that hasn't been sprayed, there are a gazillion of microorganisms on them. If you eat healthy food, or maybe some fermented food, or just anything natural, if you eat that, you don't need probiotics, because it's already in your food. And that's really the key to health, having all these beneficial microorganisms. And it's a scary thing for people, because we've been taught that microorganisms or bacteria are bad. But I have to do a revelation, and that is, you are one giant bacteria. You're not a human. We have more non-human cells in our body than we have human cells. The first time I heard that, I was like, what the heck is this? But it's true. They found out that we're more non-human than human. And these are actually the cells that are keeping us happy and healthy. So if you're like using too much hand gel or eating food that has been sterilized, then you're literally killing these little creatures that are keeping you alive. So that's regenerative farming. Producing food full of these invisible microorganisms that are the key to your health and happiness.
And how does regenerative differ from organic or sustainable farming?
Well, the thing is, organic farming, as how it was created, already was regenerative farming. The only problem is, we started to create rules for organic farming, which is a good thing, because some people don't abide by the rules and just say, oh, it's organic, and they keep on spraying. So rules are good, but rules can also be hollowed out. And that's what's happening sometimes. Is some farmers are saying, organic, I can maybe make more money this way. I'm just gonna do like the bare minimum and keep on illegally pumping water, keep on using plastic, keep on plowing the soil 20 times a year. I'm exaggerating a bit, of course. And they're still being able to call it organic. But if regenerative is in the sentence, then you cannot like put plastic waste on your field, or use organic pesticides, or or illegally pump out groundwater. That's the big difference, is that it's one step further. Organic should be the bare minimum. It's like if you put cars on the road, you have a minimum crash test they must do before they can enter the road, before you're able to sell a car. And we should do the same with food. Before we put food on the market, it needs to pass a crash test. And this crash test should be, it needs to be minimum organic. That's the basic. And then we can go much higher. Then you can go biodynamic, regenerative, organic, agroecological. It's a lot of different words to just say you're growing food without poisoning, without ruining the planet.
Yeah. Within the sports industry, athletes pay really a huge attention to food quality. And quite often it's overwhelming. For example, we talk about organic food. You go to the supermarket, 90%. All those beautiful organic items are wrapped in plastic, which is given. And then you ask yourself, why is it like that? It's a fact, but for athletes, it's really hard to get your head around what's a good item and what's not good item. Because at the end of the day, your performance relies entirely on the quality of the food you process and you digest.
Oh yeah,
it's a given,
100%.
So and I like when you explain the relation between the food we eat, we digest, and the impact or the effect it has on our gut, which is important.
Well, personally, I have a couple of rules, and every athlete should follow these rules if that athlete takes his or her performance and body seriously. And rule number 1 is put your body on the first place. That's the most important part. If you have a Ferrari, you're not going to buy shitty diesel and put it in your Ferrari, or gasoline or whatever you put in a Ferrari. You're going to take the best quality fuel you can get. And it's the same for your body. Get the best quality fuel. And the minimum quality of any athlete should be organic. That's the bare minimum. If you don't do that, you don't have self-respect, because you're ingesting chemicals and your body is directing energy to fight those chemicals and to store it in your liver or to fight against it. And that energy cannot go to your performance, can't go to muscle regeneration. So that's like the bare minimum. The next step is to look for the biodynamic label, which is called Demeter, which is a step higher than organic, because organic foods sometimes still use organic pesticides, but Demeter doesn't use that anymore, and that food is even more vibrant than organic food. So those are the things you should need to be looking for. Of course, in an ideal world, you would know the farmer, and you would know that it's like the best possible way that he grows or she grows the food. But I also know that we have to be realistic. It's difficult, especially if you travel a lot for competitions as an athlete, to find the best sources. But if you go to local organic markets, you can often talk to those people and ask where the food comes from, and that's the bare minimum. And the plastic issue, of course, it's not nice that everything is wrapped in plastic, but that's not as much affecting your health as with or without plastic. The reason they use more plastic with organic food is because it's more alive. It becomes you can't store it for as long a time as you would be able to store a non-organic piece of fruit or vegetable. So that's why they wrap it in plastic, is to keep it longer. Is it bad? Yeah, of course, I don't like plastic either. But if you can choose, or I'm going to buy this broccoli without plastic and it's going to poison myself, or I'm going to buy this broccoli with plastic and it's not going to poison me, well, the choice is very simple. And of course, it's not an ideal world yet, but always, it's like sitting in an airplane. Always put on your own oxygen mask first before putting it on your children. Your own health is the only thing that matters. Because if you're not healthy, then you can't perform as an athlete, or even if you're not an athlete, just a normal day-to-day job, then you still need your health to be able to perform. So, yeah, don't look too much at that plastic, but first look at food that's not going to poison you. And therefore, organic is really the bare minimum. And I'm really begging people to, if they can afford it, why on earth would you put poison in your body?
Yeah. And on that, if you can afford it, so Louis, you've interacted with both regenerative farmers and big agriculture lobbyists, which we spoke a bit earlier. What's really blocking wider adoption of regenerative practices?
Several things. One is a cultural thing. If your father and grandfather has done things a different way, the same way, let's say, then you are inclined to follow their footsteps. If my father used to be a chemical farmer, and I'm now saying, oh, what you did your entire life was wrong, I'm going to do it differently, I'm really going to insult him, because I'm actually putting out my middle finger by just like doing it differently, because then I kind of say, sorry, Dad, what you done the last 40 years was totally wrong, and it's nobody wants to hear that. So that's one thing you as a child from a farmer, you need to do it in a very respectful manner and say, well, look, mom, or look, dad, science is changing, and new things are being discovered, and so that needs to be a smooth transition, and it's causing a lot of intergenerational challenges. So that is a very, very big part of it. And then, of course, again, with the lobbyists, you have a lot of free farm advisors that come and give free advice to the farmer. But how are these free advisors paid? They're paid by selling pesticides to these farmers. So they come in and they are free, and they say, okay, yeah, oh, but look at your leak. Ooh, I think you'd better spray, because otherwise you're going to have a problem. Or look at this, you do this. So this farmer is super happy to get this free advice, but he is paying for that advice with his health and with money as well. And so that's a mental shift that farmers need to make and say, okay, I'd rather pay for an advisor, an independent advisor, but know that that independent advisor is really independent. So that advisor isn't selling the farmer anything. He's just having the best interest, because the money he gets is from the farmer. So if he gives bad advice, then he's going to lose the business of the farmer. And so he has a very good incentive to keep on giving good advice. And so that's a big mental shift that needs to be made. And then, of course, you have the markets. If nobody is willing to buy organic or regenerative organic food, then farmers will not be incentivized to make a change, because there's a reason that farmers are conservative. They have a very good reason, because if farmers would not be conservative, then we would have large famines. Sometimes a farmer only receives a profit on the last couple of tons of products that he's or she is growing. And for that, this yield needs to be maximized, even if it means that it's like bullshit yields, because it's mostly water the farmer's selling with some taste in it, and not a lot of nutrition. A farmer is still paid per kilogram or per ton instead of per nutritional value. And that's a very big problem as well, is that the market needs to come with it, and there needs to be demand. So it's like a bit the story with the chicken or the egg, what's going to be first. We need to work on both levels, and that's something that, again, with every purchase you make, every fork you eat, is a vote. You're voting with your fork. So we need to raise our voices and make better food choices, and also know that you're not only poisoning yourself and your children if you're not buying organic, but you're actually very much poisoning the farmer, because that farmer is in the trenches, is in the middle of the war zone. The farmer is spraying deadly chemicals, and although he's having protection, it doesn't work flawless, that protection. So you're poisoning a farmer if you buy non-organic apples. I've been to a non-organic apple orchard, or the region where they're growing these apples. If you go out with your bike, you literally just, the pesticides, you just inhale it, and they have children living in these regions, elderly people living in these regions, and I feel so sorry for people having to grow up in a chemical waste zone, and that's not in a war zone in the Gaza or in the Ukraine. No, it's in very peaceful countries where there is chemical warfare going on every day.
Yeah. And the other damage, the impact, the negative impact of the pesticides, it's towards the insects, towards the bees, towards the microorganism, which we don't talk a lot about, which is vital to our ecosystem, you know. And Louis, is corporate agriculture truly resistant to regenerative practices, or is change happening quietly behind the scenes?
Well, corporate agriculture has interest in regenerative farming, but not always in a good way, because regenerative farming is not well defined yet officially. You have the European Alliance of Regenerative Agriculture, EARA, and they've written a very clear report about what the definition is, but it's not enforced or it's not official. And this way, every farmer can say, I'm now not plowing as much as I used to. Now I'm a regenerative farmer. So they're using it as a way to greenwash, and that's terrible thing that is going on. That's why I say, well, if you're talking about wanting regenerative farming, you need to talk about wanting to become regenerative organic, because then you have this fail-safe of having the certification of organic, which is very strict, but you also have the regenerative part, which is regenerative, and that's the way to go forward. But there is interest. For example, in Belgium, a minister of agriculture contacted me to talk about the future of agriculture and about agroecology, which is a similar term like regenerative organic. So there is more and more interest. But again, if you are selling buckets, you don't want people to fix the roof.
If you have to give an advice, let's say to me, I'm a European citizen, based on what you said earlier, that each euro we pay from our contribution, tax contribution, goes to farming, which is fantastic. And this is news to me, Louis, thanks for sharing. How can I push politicians, the people that represent us in our jurisdiction, for more accountability, for more transparency in terms of that financial support that goes to farming is well used? What's your advice?
You want easy advice, or you want advice that really makes impact?
I want advice that make impact, because at the end of the day, we are paying.
Yeah. Well, then I'm going to tell you the story of a very brave farmer from Italy. It's an organic farmer who was growing organic food, but one day the inspection of the organic certification said, look, you're not going to be organic anymore because we found pesticides on your crops. And he was very shocked because he didn't use any pesticides. And then he figured, well, because of the neighbor's usage, it's going with the wind onto his farm.
Yeah.
And so he was devastated, because if he loses his certification, he loses his profit and he loses everything, and he has to move away from the place he grew up. So he didn't want that, obviously. So he thought, what can I do? And he said, together with a local pharmacist of the village, well, let's just organize an information session for the village. And the pharmacist, of course, scientific guy, knows a thing or two about the effect of pesticides. And they just created a simple PowerPoint presentation about the dangers of pesticides, about how it's causing leukemia and cancers with kids, which is happening all across the world, in Europe and the United States. Talking about how it's killing the bees, killing the soil, killing the river water. And at the end of the info evening, the villagers were all shocked, and they said, oh my God. So we are actually letting people from the village wash their cars in the middle of the streets and let all the dirt of the cars just on the street. Yeah? So they're polluting the streets like a metaphor. So we're letting the farmers spraying poison, and our children are inhaling that poison, and we are inhaling that poison too. So at the end of the day, they were like, okay, why the heck are we letting this happen? How on earth is it possible that we spray poison on our food. If you give a kid an apple and you say, hey kid, 5-year-old kid, here, I have an apple for you. The kid is going to say, okay, thanks. Oh, wait. I'm first going to spray some poison on it. Here you are. Then the kid is going to think you're insane, because a 5-year-old kid knows that you shouldn't spray poison on an apple. But we're doing it every day. We're even, and especially apples, we're spraying 25 times per year on apples, and then we put it in our mouths and children's mouths. So the people from that village, they said, okay, we would be crazy if we would keep allowing that. So they said, well, let's do a vote. They did a vote, and they decided as a community to stop using pesticides in their community. I often try it with people when I give keynotes across the world, and I say, okay, please raise your hand if you want to poison your kid or your kids. Nobody ever raises their hands. Nobody wants to poison their kids, or at least mostly. So they voted against. Together with the farmers, they worked and they banned pesticides. The farmers switched to organic. They also made sure that all the kids growing up in that valley were eating organic food until they're 18 years old. And it's a beautiful example of just simple people having an information session. And once people know about the danger of pesticides, you would really be stupid. And I'm not trying to be rude, but you would really be stupid to poison yourself and to poison your kids.
Yeah.
And so his name is Gunther. And so my advice to you would be, become the Gunther of your household, first and for all, and ban poisoned food from your household. Then next step, from your family, your street, and then your village, and then maybe your province, and then why not your entire country, or the entire Europe. And go as far as you can go, because nobody has the stamina of being this Gunther, that farmer, to do that. But it all starts with yourself. And I have to admit, even for me, I wrote a book about it. It took a while to make this transition to organic foods entirely, but it does something with persons. For example, I not too long ago, somebody gave me an apple. Hey, Louis, you want this apple? And I asked, well, is it an organic apple? And they say, no, it's not. And I say, oh, look, sir, I'm not going to eat it. And they were first shocked and say, oh, why not? And I was like, yeah, but there are 25 different residues of pesticides on that apple. I'm not going to poison myself. And first, the people were a bit, thrown off, and they thought, is this guy being rude? But then they realized, oh gosh, he's right. Why should you put that in your mouth? And so that's the long advice to give you.
No, thank you. And Louis, we see every year, mainly here in Europe, France, Germany, Belgium, Italy, we see every year there is a big strike, farmers creating havoc in the highways and stuff like that. Protesting against some regulations, against inequality in terms of pricing, mainly products coming from Eastern Europe and stuff like that. But I never ever, correct me if I'm wrong, Louis, I never ever heard through the mainstream media farmers are protesting because they want to eliminate pesticides or clean up their soil, or pushing the politicians to push for legislation and policies and strong regulations to ban completely pesticides.
Yeah, well, I'd like you to imagine that you've been in a plane crash. Your plane crashed, and you had to hike through mountains for 5 days without any food and any water. So after 5 days, you'd be completely dehydrated, malnourished. You'd be really hungry. And then you find this vending machine, which is full of Coca-Cola and full of unhealthy snacks. What?
Chips.
Yes. What are you gonna say? Oh, I boycott the Coca-Cola company. I'm not gonna drink it. Or I'm against sugar. I'm not gonna eat this Twix or Lion that's in the vending machine. No, you're starving, so you just eat anything. You just drink anything, and then all your principles, of course, you throw them away because you simply need to survive. And that's mainly the reason why farmers start protesting, is because they are almost bankrupt. They are pushed by legislations to have yet extra rules. But sometimes farmers need to spend more time in their offices doing accountancy and other regulational forms instead of spending time on their tractors. And that's the biggest reason that farmers are protesting, because like if they don't sell enough, if they have bad contracts, they are not able to send their kids to school. So farmers are under immense pressure. And if you're surviving, you're not thinking about who. I've been 5 days without any food, and I'm sorry, I'm not gonna drink this Coca-Cola. I'm not gonna. It needs to be organic. No, you're just gonna drink whatever you get. And so, when you're in a survival mode, then you don't have time to think about the planet or about your health. You just need to survive. And some farmers are really desperate. There are a lot of farmer suicides because of that, which is terrible. And so that's, if you look at Maslow's pyramid, those are the first things that we need to tackle, is make sure that also farmers are paid more correctly. And then we can think about pesticides. And sometimes, like, I used to remember a time where I was angry at farmers because I saw them spraying pesticides, and I thought it's the fault of the farmer. But it's not the fault of the farmer. It's the fault of just a system that's built around, again, selling buckets, and everybody's getting more poor and
Quick fix.
instead of the people selling buckets.
Yeah. What's the biggest myth or misconception about feeding the global population?
Well, the biggest myth is that we need to feed the world. It's not true. We need to feed ourselves, we need to feed our country, and we need to feed Europe. We might need to feed some other people in other countries with our products in order to buy their chocolates and bananas. So we have a healthy exchange, but it's not up to us to raise millions of pigs to send them then to China. Because, for example, now we are cutting down the rainforest in Brazil to feed pigs in Belgium, and then we sell those pigs in China, for example. And or we cut down the rainforest to grow soy, and we feed this soy to Norwegian salmon. Yes, salmon with soy. And then we sell this salmon and say, oh yeah, we're eating more sustainably because we are eating salmon instead of meat, but you're still cutting down the rainforest. So that's a big myth. And also a big myth is also people say that regenerative organic agriculture cannot feed the world, which is total bullshit. It can feed the world perfectly without any problem. And, you know, we have something called the Merchants of Doubt. There's been a book written called Merchants of Doubt. You've been talking about tobacco industry before. They use the same script to spread doubt about the health of cigarettes. They achieved 50 years of kind of hiding the fact that cigarettes are deadly. 50 years, that's half a century. The same happens with asbestos. For more than 100 years, they said, oh, but there's nothing wrong with asbestos. In Europe, we now know that it's wrong and we don't sell it anymore. But in the United States, the Merchants of Doubt have won because they're still selling asbestos. So we in Europe are like, what the heck are you doing? That's crazy. It's super carcinogenic. We don't sell it anymore. But the United States or Brazil, they're still selling it. And that's one of the myths they're just spreading. They're making us scared. Say, oh my God, you're not going to be able to feed the world. Well, the thing is, you should reverse that and say, well, how are you going to feed the world in 25 years if 90% of our soils will be degraded by using your techniques that you say that will feed the world? You are the one that's not going to be able to feed the world.
What's the real cost of delaying action on soil regeneration?
Well, the real cost is that 1 in every 3 persons is chronically ill, and 1 in every 4 persons is taking sleeping meds and taking antidepressants. And in 25 years, we won't have enough good soil to have food, and we'll all be doomed. That's the cost.
It's very depressing.
It's a big depressing cost. So yeah, if you hear this and you're not doing anything about it, it's like, okay, or you don't believe it, or you don't want to hear it.
And how quickly, Louis, are you seeing impacts on the ground right now?
Well, it can go super fast. So that's a nice thing. And so the book I wrote is really all about the positive stories about farmers that are transitioning their farms in very short periods of times by using very simple techniques that are mostly also saving them a lot of money. They're regenerating their soil sometimes in 1 season, sometimes in 5 years. In very bad cases, it can take 10 years, but it's possible. For example, we are regenerating with our company, our landscape design company, in a private island in Argentina, which has been totally degraded. It was like total ecological collapse. But after taking away the cause of the problem and letting nature kickstart the regeneration process, after 1 year, we could already see a difference in vegetational growth. So it is amazing to see how much potential nature has to regenerate. And that is one of the most hopeful things there is.
Yeah. And what's your biggest fear when you look at the future?
Well, my biggest fear is that people are unhappy. That's really my biggest fear, because at the end, if you think about what's the most important thing in life, and like our clients, for example, at our landscape architecture firm, we have billionaire clients, we have average clients, we have very right-wing clients, left-wing clients, religious, non-religious, but we all have two things in common. We all want our kids to be happy and healthy. And if people ask me, well, what keeps you awake at night? And first I thought it's nature being degraded or soil being degraded, but if I really feel deeply, then it just makes me so sad that I literally sometimes cry if I think about it. And it's about people being scared, being unhappy, being sad, being afraid that their parents are going to be bombarded in a war, or that's being so sad because their daughter just died from leukemia because of pesticide residues, or being so sad that their father just died because he committed suicide and drank pesticides because he couldn't handle the pressure and the debt anymore. Those stories just, they give me goosebumps and are so sad, and those stories are happening more and more, and we can prevent those stories to happen. We can prevent this sadness. And for me, that's my biggest fear. So I'm talking right now, I'm still pretty young, I'm 31 years old, that let's say in 25 years, where I'm gonna be 55, 60 years old, that I'm gonna say, oh my gosh, look at me, 31 years old, being so active, trying to regenerate the land, and now the entire earth is degraded and people are starving all across the world, and we didn't do anything about it, though this knowledge was already around 25 years ago. And yeah, I think that's my biggest fear, that we like knew exactly what needed to be done, but we didn't do it.
Yeah, yeah. Let's shift gear, Louis, and talk about your book, SOS, Save Our Soil, How Regenerative Food and Farming Will Save Your Health and the Planet. Let's talk about the writing process. How you did it, from an idea to putting the whole concept together. What's the most difficult, Louis? The start, the try to find how you're gonna end the book. Yeah, if you can walk us through the process.
Well, it was a long process. It took about 12 years to complete.
Wow.
So I'm a very impatient man, but still somehow patient enough.
But why 12 years? You didn't have time? Was it
No,
time?
no, no. It's
or
just it's 12 years of knowledge and of experience and of
data?
inspiration. So I like the first years were really all about exploring and talking with people, and then after a couple of years, it was like, okay, now I need to bundle all these thoughts and start to taking it more seriously and really interview people more in depth. Also recording these interviews, and then right now you have these AI tools that you can just put your recording into the computer and it will transcribe it and will generate all the text. You can read it. Back then I had to re-listen to every interview and transcribe it, and then I had to find a way to make one coherent story out of it, and it's difficult or a lot of people find it difficult to talk about very diverse subjects that are very scientific into very simple terms, and that has also been my biggest challenge. Okay, how can we explain very difficult terms into a kind of language that even a 10-year-old can understand? For example, a 10-year-old that doesn't even have English as the main language but can still read this book in English and understand what it's all about. So then, then I have obviously started writing after transcribing all the interviews and writing down also my personal feelings, because it's also a personal journey, which is
Journey, yeah.
a big, also emotional roller coaster. Because my identity also changed the last 12 years, going from somebody who's very radical thinking into somebody who's more nuanced and a little bit wiser, let's say, than 12 years ago. Um, and also, more like I really became a bridge builder all after all these years, and I'm super. That's maybe one of the things I'm the most proud of, is that I'm, instead of trying to pick fights with people, I really became good at one day talking to a hippie farmer and the other day talking to Bayer or Monsanto or another or a big lobby organization, for example, and also being able to understand them, why they're doing what they're doing. It's like a baby that has been 12 years in the making and now it's born. So I'm super glad that I'm able to take people on the 12-year journey that they can read in one afternoon if they if they're busy. Like it's a pretty thick book. I think it's 270 pages, something like that. No, 284 pages.
And for our audience, the book is available on Amazon, huh?
Yeah. In every country in the world, yeah.
And if you have to write the second book, would you follow the same process, Louis, or you do it differently? Not 12 years.
No, never again. No, it's no. Well, I'm actually I'm already I've already written the second book, but it's only in Dutch right now. So and that's,
is it published?
Yeah, it is published in Dutch.
Okay.
And that's more a manual on how to design your food forest, which is a type of regenerative farming. Agroforestry.
Interesting.
So that's more a kind of manual, and it's like all the wisdom we gathered with our landscape agriculture, landscape architecture firm. I'm also currently writing a third book, which is about more wider, about like all the different ways we're polluting ourselves, not only with food, but also with our clothes or with paints and with whatever, and also finding solutions about that. And I'm much more, while my first book was really very organic and talking with people, traveling the world and letting it come in super organically and taking the time to let everything simmer in. Now my third book is about, okay, I need this information. Check, I'm going to that person. This need this information. Okay, I'm gonna read these studies. I think I became much more efficient now than, which is why it's not gonna take 12 years.
And your role, Louis, is it more as an investigator, as / scientist, or maybe a journalist, put it this way?
Well, I'm not trained as a journalist. I'm trained as a scientist. But I think my biggest role is to just be a human, have a lot of experience, try to bundle these experiences, make them very much understandable and relatable, so people can just hear the story of another human being. Because
and when you talk to farmers, have you noticed or have you experienced some kind of aggressive or rejection from some farmers?
No, that's a nice thing. Since I'm not an aggressive person myself, and I went everywhere with very open heart. Even when I went to Bayer or Monsanto, I was like, look, I'm not gonna have any judgments whatsoever. I used to have, but I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put that aside and just be open, listen, reached my hand. And in my opinion, that's really the start of world peace, because everybody was super welcoming, even though I'm not eating meat, mostly because of health reasons, because of most of the meat you buy in the world is full of chemicals, hormones or antibiotics, and the animals have been treated inhumanely as well. Even though I'm a vegetarian, I was welcomed with open arms by pig farmers, for example, who have pigs in their barn that those pigs never see the daylight, and super kind, and I sometimes even have had food with them, and they even let me sleep in their homes, though I was a completely stranger. Though I truly believe that if you open your heart, then then you can become friends with everybody, even with people you don't agree with.
Yeah. And to finish up the writing process, the editing process, was it hard?
Yeah, it was. It took a long time, but I was very fortunate to have very good editors. So first I had a coach who helped coach me into having this, for example, a book that's probably 20 centimeters thick and make it much smaller. Also helped me to structure it much better. And then after that, I had a very good editor that helped me to remove all the crap out of it. And so that's why you're of course very happy to be surrounded by professionals.
Yeah, yeah. Louis, what legacy do you hope to leave through your work?
Well, one of my biggest goal in life is that when I'm on my deathbed, that I can see that the entire Europe has become poison free.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a basic right for everybody not to be poisoned. That's really the biggest goal I want to achieve. I know it's something that you shouldn't need to spend your entire life on, and it should be there, a poison free world, but it's not there, so we need to work for that. So and entire Europe, regenerative, organic, poison free, that's where we need to go. And of course, the 550 million hectares of trees, those two things.
Yeah. Great. Now it's time for our lightning round. Ready for speedy Q&A?
All right.
Let's do this. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Or something else? Tea. Morning person or a night owl?
Night owl.
Which book do you recommend most, beside of your book?
The One Straw Revolution, written by Masanobu Fukuoka, a philosopher farmer from Japan. An amazing book.
One habit that changed your life?
Actively choosing to feel happy and grateful for everything. I think being grateful is one of the most enriching things you can do in your life, because if you're not grateful with what you have today, you'll not be grateful with what you'll have tomorrow, and you'll never be grateful. So I think that's one of the most important things, and not only on a spiritual level, but also on a pragmatical level. If you are not on an adventure and a thing happens, or you're designing a property and there is too much water or too much or too little of something, and you ask yourself the question, well, how can we be grateful for this invasive weed? Then you come to interesting conclusions and you say, oh, this weed, you can actually eat it. So it's an invasive food. That means you can eat as much as you want from it, and it will always come back. Free food forever. Let's be grateful.
Favorite place you visited?
Costa Rica.
Nice. Food you'll never eat again?
Rotten shark.
An item you can't travel without, beside of your smartphone, of course.
My laptop.
Okay. Biggest current fear?
Unhappiness.
And your biggest hope?
The potential that every human has inside of himself or herself to change their lives and the world. Everybody has that potential. We just need to activate it.
Your guilty pleasure snack?
Desserts. Tiramisu, creme brulee, ice creams.
Yeah. I feel yeah. Louis, if you could have a chance to have a dinner with a historical figure, who would it be and why?
I think it would be with Richard Branson, because he has managed to create a gazillion different companies with a lot of fun, with a lot of impact on the people working with him. And I think that if I would have dinner with him, I would really strategize an entire evening about, okay, how can we apply all the business knowledge you have on regenerating this planet? Because he has a brilliant mind in a non-extractive way. He has built so many interesting things, interesting companies with happy customers, happy employees. So how can we do this for regeneration?
Louis De Jaeger, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Well, it has been a pleasure as well. Thanks for the interesting questions.
And to our listeners, I leave you with a few words from David Attenborough. We won't protect what we don't love, we won't love what we don't understand, and we won't understand what we're not taught. I'm Sid Bensalah. Thank you for tuning in to the Pre-Zero Sports Talk podcast. If you've enjoyed the audio, there is more for you now. You can watch the full episode on YouTube and Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious, inspired, and make a difference. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.